Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Duwane Adams on the line. Duwane, how you doing?
I'm doing very good, getting geared up for the upcoming deer season, thank God.
Yeah, for sure. So this weekend, starting Friday, I believe that's the 26th, we've got the early season Coues deer hunts kicking off kind of all over the state, and the early season, first season up in the Kaibab on the rifle hunt. Let's start with the Kaibab and talk a little bit about the early season. It looks like we've got a full moon here, and I want to know what your thoughts are as far as relationship to mule deer and having this full moon kind of staring us in the face for this hunt. I believe it's full on the 24th, so in 2 days it'll be full. How do you think that's going to affect the hunt?
Well, you never know, Jay, until you get up there and get in the middle of it. I'm starting to go up there tomorrow, but they've had 3 snows up there. One of them about 6 inches, and the others were just an inch or a dusting. So I'm expecting that the migration is going to start, if it hasn't already started. So if it starts, those deer will just walk a lot farther at night. That's when they usually do their walking, but they rest a lot during the day. So they're trying to get something to eat, So it's always something. If it's not the full moon, it's the wind, it's something. But that's what they pay us for, to find deer.
Yeah. How do conditions look up there? Obviously, you're 4 or 5 days out from the season even starting. You're going to get up there and scout and look around. But do you have any type of long-range forecast as far as, are any storms coming in, any weather expected, or what do you anticipate?
I haven't seen anything except the one that was here yesterday was headed up that way, and I don't know if they got any dusting of snow or not. But, once it starts to freeze, that's what I really find. It changes that Kaibab. It freezes. It changes the food, and those deer start to move. And they move almost 40 miles. So they start to drop down, and so that, I think that's bigger than the full moon and anything else, because once they start to migrate, they just start coming off that mountain. And one of my guides was up there last week, and he was telling me that the deer already started to fall down, and so that was encouraging to me, because then they'll be in that oak basin, and then there's acorns, and they can gorge themselves on those acorns. So and once it's freeze and those leaves are off, and then it's good glassing it, but with those leaves on, it's tough in those oaks.
Okay, so you talk about the migration, and for those people that are going up there on that early hunt, you're talking about deer that have summered up by Jacob's Lake and up on top of the plateau, and you're talking about your guides, and with these dustings of snow that you're hearing that the deer are already starting to make their move. I guess the fine line on that hunt on this early season is trying to figure out exactly where those bucks mainly are in that migration. Obviously, that's what people pay you for, but what do you look for? I mean, are you actually looking for deer, tracks moving down? Are you driving up in the high country and not seeing deer, so then they've moved or, on their way? Talk a little bit about that migration.
Well, that's a good question, because that's exactly why we go early. There will always be deer on top. Even during the late season, there will always be deer up there. We have found that, Jay. But what happens is there's less and less deer up there every day as they start to migrating down. And there will always be big bucks up there. We've killed them up there with 18 inches of snow. They're still there, but there's not lots of them. And so when they start to move down, it's just like any other kind of migration. They just start slowly moving down. Well, I think the first thing that they're trying to do that we found is, once they walk that distances, somewhere around Big Springs, which is 20 miles, they're starved to death. So they feed a lot. We've noticed them feeding longer in the mornings and longer in the evenings, because they burn a lot of calories. And water last year was very brutal, because there wasn't any. The Game and Fish was hauling water 24/7 to all the trick tanks. but they've got quite a bit of water up there right now. One of the guys that worked for me, he checked a couple of trick tanks, and he said they were full. So that's a blessing, thank God. So the deer aren't going to have to struggle coming down to the trick tanks. There'll be water there. But foods right now is the next thing that they're going to be looking for, and that oak basin is generally what they held up in.
So when they start making their move, you're talking about, the total migration from the top to most of the low areas. What are we talking, 30, 40 miles? How far are we talking?
It's almost 40 miles when you look at it, all the way out on Jump Up and all the way out on the Gooseneck, and then over there at Willow Point. It's a long ways, and that's, aeronautical miles. That's not canyons crossing, gigantic canyons, and but it usually takes them, a week to a week and a half when they start coming on down. And when they come. They don't mess around.
Yeah, that was one question I was going to ask you. For those guys out there, doing the hunt on their own, when do you know that you're kind of in the zone where the deer are? I mean, your deer numbers are way up, or, are you looking for bucks and does and just deer that are moving and you kind of find those zones where they're at, or how do you know you're in the right pocket?
Well, I'll tell you what I found. If you're not in the deer tracks and sign, you're not in the deer. And it's just really that simple. And you can go all the way down to Jump Up, and if you don't see any deer, you better get out of there. And you better start back up into white pockets and slide, and you better get back up in that next zone, because they'll hang up in those zones, Jay, what I found, for a few days feeding. They just don't just take off and, just keep walking. They'll feed in that area, and then they go on down to the next level. And they, so they'll feed on the cliff rose and the sage and, all that food once they fall off the oaks. But I think food's probably as critical as anything once they start to move, because it's like anything else. The temperature changes, and they have to burn more metabolism to eat. So about 4 or 5 years ago, Jay, we killed a buck that scored 225, and he was right off a main road. And we glassed this deer laying down, and he looked like a dog laying down with his head down. He was wore out. And one of the guys who was with me glassed me, "Hey, Duwane, there's a deer laying there." And I said, "Where?" And he kept telling me, and I couldn't see the deer. I said, I don't see it, Brett. He said, "Duwane, it's laying down like a dog." He said, "You can just barely see the horns." Then I paid attention, because usually when you glass for a deer, you're looking for him with his horns up, turning, Well, he had his eyes closed. He was wore out. We shot at that deer 3 times, Jay, before he even knew we were shooting at him.
Those are the best kind, Duwane.
They're the best. Thank God we killed him. Thank God we killed him. But literally, and when we got over there, we killed that deer, and we got over there and we gutted that deer, and there was not enough in his stomach that you could hardly hold in your hands.
Really?
And I said, "Look at this." I said, he was wore out and starved to death from walking down.
Talk a little bit about glassing in some of those transition pockets, Duwane. Are most of those pockets areas where you can really get a real big panoramic look, or is a lot of it just kind of dodging and weaving and kind of standing and glassing, with your tripod up and moving, and or can you get out where you actually can see quite a bit of country?
No, Jay, I wish it was. There are very few places that you can glass like Coues deer country. They're just not there. And even if you can glass at great distances, by the time you get off and get out there, you can't see them, because they faded back into the cedar trees. So it's picking. We're picking and moving, and getting them some points and picking and moving. That's how we're hunting them. So generally, when we see one, we got a short window. If he's a killer, there's not going to be like you're going to be able to come back there and get him again. It's usually right then if he's moving.
Yeah, that was another question I was going to ask you. With this transitional period, I assume that if you glass a deer in the morning, you better stay on him, because if you go back for lunch and come back in the afternoon, he could have already rested up and be headed, on the move. Is that what you see, or do you see a lot of times they'll hang for 2 or 3 days in one specific pocket?
I think that depends on pressure. If you're hunting some canyons and there's a lot of pressure, they just keep moving. But if there's not very much pressure, they'll hold up a few more days, we have found. And there's a few canyons that we're hunting that there's not very much pressure, but some of the canyons we're hunting that has always been good. If we see a big buck, you better shoot him, because somebody's going to be on the cross of the canyon, and once they bump them, those big bucks, they just keep moving. They don't mess around.
Is using your vehicle to move within the course of, say, a morning or an evening more critical on a hunt like this, as far as, hitting some points and keep moving down the road and get out, and park the truck and, go hit a couple more points, or, compared to, say, the late hunts? Or is this more of a stationary style, time period where you're hunting? You know what I mean? During this time period, are you more stationary?
No, we use the vehicle a lot, just like you're saying, because the deer are moving down, and so we'll get out and walk out there, a quarter of a mile or a mile, wherever we know where a point is that we want to walk out to. But if we don't see them, we're walking right back as fast as we can and moving to the next spot. And we might do that 4 or 5 spots in a morning, or 6 or 7. It just depends. But that being said, if we see a big buck, it's all over with. We stay right there if there's nobody there, because we probably will have a great chance of killing that deer.
Duwane, talk a little bit about the copper bullets and the lead bullets there with the condor, and I know the Game and Fish encourage people to use the copper bullets. Is that still in play, and what do you know about that?
Yeah, that's still in play. They have a condor game warden lady that comes into camp, and she's been awful helpful and nice to us. She comes in camp every year, and we use Berger bullets anyway, so those are copper bullets, so we've not had any trouble. Okay. Some of the other manufacturers, I don't know, but I really encourage people to use a Berger bullet, because, man, it just seems to kill them. When it hits them, it makes them sick fast. So, and they've not had any kind of problem as far as the Game and Fish with us using those kind of bullets. So, but that condor thing could stop the whole Kaibab. So I encourage the guys to get their bullets and to, kind of participate with what's going on, because the last thing you want to do is have a big fight over a condor and a bullet.
Do you see condors quite often?
Oh, we see them almost daily. Yeah. Yeah, they're all over down those. They're all over down in there. Eating dead carrion of all kinds. You can see them, and they're gigantic. I had no clue how big they were until I seen them. Their wingspan's almost 10 feet.
Duwane, what's your opinion? You've hunted up in the Kaibab 30, 40 years. What's your opinion as far as trend? As far as quality of hunt, quality of antlers, overall deer numbers, what have you, compared to, are we trending up, trending down, are we flatline? Where are we at in your opinion?
I think the quality has went up immensely in the last 4 years, and I give Todd Buck all the credit for that. The game warden up there was 250 tags on the late hunt 10 years ago. Then he cut it to 175. Then he got it to 150, and he got it down to 130. Now there's 100. But you're seeing people every day that has either shot at or has killed, the magic number 200-inch deer, or seeing them. So it's done a great deal, and it's also the same on the east side. There was 200 in tags, and there's 95 on the early season. So it's a quality hunt. There's a chance that a guy could kill an absolute monster, and I don't know if you know it, but they killed the governor's tag there about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it scored 250.
Yeah, I heard about that. In your opinion, obviously there's more deer on the west side. You talk about, you think it's trending up, as far as talking about the Kaibab in general. Do you feel that the west side or east side is on more of a steep trend up or down, meaning, potentially one answer could be, well, the east side's kind of holding its own, but the west side's really getting better, or vice versa. Do you have an opinion either way on comparing and contrasting the two sides?
I actually think the west side's better, and I don't think it's because of trending either way. I think it's better because there's a tremendous amount more food there, Jay, on the west side, and when those deer fall off, once they get to the winter road just past Big Springs, they've got almost 20 miles of a winter range out there, all the way from Watts all the way to Willow Point. That it's unbelievable. They don't have that on the east side. That's really the problem. Besides the coxcombs down there and that Buck Farm Loop that down there, the winter range is very limited down there, and I think that's really is what struggles. Todd told me something years ago, and I think he was right. He said that he wanted to come in there and have some more knockdown with a cat like they did back in the '60s. But of course, you know how that went. He's had a big blowback with our environmentalists, and he said that was probably and if you see a lot of those old growths, 50 years ago, they've all grown up and they need to be knocked down again. And he said something to me, and I think he was right, that's the biggest structure is when they come off the top. There's plenty of food on top, Jay, but it's the winter that holds them. The winter that they can't. They'll overgraze it to death if there's too many deer down there.
Yeah, makes sense. So this 12A West early hunt, there's 500 tags, and then the 12A East early hunt, there's 95 tags. Do you have hunters in both West and East this year, or just West?
No, we do. I usually do every year. I have them on both sides, on the East and West side, and we run a camp, and we just move out of that camp to both sides. We sure do. Yes.
So you run both? You run them out of one camp, or do you have an East camp and a West camp?
No, I run them out of one camp, and then we'll go either direction that we need to go from there.
Gotcha. It's got to be pretty cool for the guys in camp to see some of the other bucks that are coming in to just keep the juices flowing. When, say you got some West Side hunters and you kill a couple bucks, and you got an East Side hunter, and there's, getting your hands on a buck. Maybe if you've had 4 or 5 days of tough hunting, it's nice to keep the juices flowing by seeing those bucks. Do you agree with that?
It really is. You said a mouthful. 3 years ago, we had 12 hunters, and in 3 days we'd kill 7 bucks, and the other guys all knew they were going to kill nice bucks because they had seen them and missed and on and on. So it's always encouraging when somebody keeps bringing in a nice buck, and it keeps all the morale up, and that's important because hunting is if a hunter gets down, then it's hard to get him back up because he may not think that you're as good a guide as if you told him you was. But once they start seeing deer killed and letting bucks go, well, it changes their attitude, and they're excited.
Yeah. So looking forward to this hunt coming up with camp, hunters going east and west. I mean, do you fully anticipate that at least one of your hunters will probably get a shot at a 200-inch buck on this early hunt, or is that a little too optimistic?
No. We do just about every year. Just about it. Yeah. Almost every year we either kill one or we're shooting at them. And last year was no difference. One of the guys that works for me, Frank Lopez, is just he got into a bachelor group of bucks, and they were down about 18 miles down in Little Canyon, and he glassed under all 4 of them were together, and they sat there, and he kept trying to figure out which one to shoot, and he finally told the guy, just shoot any of them. He said they're all gigantic. He said any one of those deer are over 200. There's 4 big bucks coming together. What was interesting is the hunter missed it. He shot at him 3 times. It missed the bucks, and then Frank told us which way they went. So the next day we went down in that zone, and we dropped down about another 2 or 3 miles, and we started coming in at this place a little differently, and one of the other guys found him again. But they fell down another 4 or 5 miles, and he found them again, and they were single file just walking, and he caught up to them, and that client missed them too.
Oh man,
that's
a bummer.
Yeah, that happens almost every year. Now, let me tell you the other side. My son had a tag last year, and I guided Luke, and we let 120 bucks go. Him and I did in the course of that hunt, and he never shot a shell. So
wow,
we did not see that 200-inch deer. Luke and I didn't, but we've seen 4 bucks that were legitimately over 180, and they were early in the hunt. And he's hunted there since he was a boy, and he's 40 years old. And I said, "What do you think, Luke?" He said, "What do you think, Dad?" I said, "They're not over 190, Luke. And I said, we got time, and what worked out to the best. We didn't kill a deer, but I got to hunt with my son for the whole hunt. And when it was all over with, I mean, he gave me a big hug. He said, "Man, did we have fun, Dad?" That's as important as killing a 200-inch deer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you guys.
You bet.
Good for you guys. Duwane, up there on the Kaibab, as far as antler characteristics, are you seeing a lot of typicals, a lot of non-typicals? I mean, is it 50-50? What's the predominant buck up there that's, a good, big, mature buck? Is he a typical or is he a non-typical?
We don't see very many typical bucks. Once they get mature, they've got trash on them. And I get just the characteristic of the Kaibab. I mean, for every just real heavy 4-point that's typical, we'll kill 9 non-typicals that are mature.
Okay.
I mean, we don't see a lot of those. I killed a typical 3 years ago with a guy that scored 202, and it was just exactly no kickers. It's just a big, massive buck. But I hadn't killed one of those in a long time because, I mean, we've been mostly they have trash on them, and if I see trash on them, I just lose my mind.
Yeah, I do too.
I love different structural horns, and I tell clients all the time. I said, listen, there's probably not another deer like that in the world. There may be a not typical, but it's not the same as they're all different, Jay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. That's one thing with Coues deer as well. You get those extra points. I mean, it's just awesome stuff. I know that they have had sightings of elk up there on the Kaibab, and I'm not sure if they still do, but they had opportunity tags where you could just buy a tag and shoot an elk. Do they still have some elk out there on the Kaibab, and have you ever seen them?
Never have, Jay. I've never seen an elk, but almost every one of my guides have. I never have. I've never seen them, and I'm sometimes hunting close to them. But I don't know if that's taking place now, and I don't think it is. I think there's a hunt that's in August now that's a limited opportunity. But I went to the Game and Fish and told them that there were 2 cows at such and such place that one of my guides had killed, and there was actually 2 guys standing there, and I took them over there, and they ended up shooting both cows. I said, this is the area that one of my guides seen them in, right here. I said, so he said they were on that hillside. And I did not talk to those gentlemen, but I talked to the Game and Fish when we checked the buck in. He said they killed it. They killed both of them.
Gotcha. Duwane, I want to take a second here and thank the sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com gear shop. Cody Nelson, my friend of over 20 years, is the new optics manager there. He used to be at the Outdoorsman's. Now he's at the GoHunt.com gear shop. I call him the glassing guru and the optics authority. He's a great guy. You can call Cody directly for info and sales at 702-847-8747, extension 2, or you can email him at optics@gohunt.com. If you have any optical needs, whether it be binos, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, tripods, etc., give Cody a call. He's promised me that he's going to take care of the J. Scott Outdoors podcast listeners. Also want to thank Coues.com. That's Kuiu.com. Obviously, people that listen to this podcast and follow my Instagram know that I've been wearing Coues since 2010. I'm a strong supporter of Coues, and I want to thank them for their sponsorship of this podcast. CanyonCoolers.com, based right out of Flagstaff, Arizona. If you use the JScott promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount on all orders at CanyonCoolers.com. If you guys haven't checked out their coolers, you should. They're awesome coolers. I've been using them all fall and really like them. And then Phonescope.com. Phonescope is back with us. They had to take a couple-month break as a sponsor, but they're back with us. If you use the JScott18 promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount on all orders there at Phonescope.com. And then also, not a sponsor of the podcast, but guys, November 1st is the raffle drawing. My friend Joe Durago, he's a pastor in the Phoenix area. I just did a podcast with him. He's trying to help out orphaned kids, and his organization, The Hope Effect, is doing a raffle, and they're giving away 10 prizes, and two of the prizes, one of them is a Mexico Coues deer hunt with Colburn and Scott Outfitters, and then a Gould's turkey hunt with us down in Mexico, as well as 8 other prizes. There's only 350 tickets being sold. FYI, they've only sold about 150 tickets, so there's 200 tickets left. They're $100 each, but you have a chance to win 10 different prizes, with the main 2 prizes being the Mexico Coues deer hunt and the Gould's turkey hunt. You can check the show notes for the link to buy a ticket, but you can also go to shootersworld.com /go/Hope Effect raffle, or you can just go to the show notes, or you can send me a direct message and I'll send you the link. Duwane, you're going to be heading up to the Kaibab, but then I assume when you get back from the Kaibab, you've got some of those November Coues deer hunts. While you're going to be in the Kaibab, the October Coues deer seasons all across southern Arizona and central Arizona are kicking off. First question would be, do you have any October Coues deer guided hunters that some of your other guides are taking, and or if not, are you going to be taking some of those middle, November season Coues deer hunters?
Yes, I'll be taking the November one. We don't have any in October, but when we come back, we're filled up, thank God, on all those November hunts, those two middle hunts, and then the late hunt as well.
Okay, and looking forward to the guys that are while you're on the Kaibab this Friday, they're going to be starting these October Coues deer hunts. You've done this for 40-plus years and hunted a lot of these October hunts. And we've talked about it on the podcast before, but if you were going to break down and tell some guys that are going on these October Coues deer hunts, maybe some of them for the first time, or maybe some guys that just are looking for some advice, what are some tips that you would give these guys going out on these early season hunts, like where to find bucks, where to camp, where to glass, just some of the general tips that you would give for these October hunters?
Well, camping, I'll tell you, I don't camp anywhere close to the border on purpose, so that's out. I'd camp closer into town somewhere so there's less problems. But looking for those Coues deer, the best thing to do, Jay, is have already tried to find some before the season starts and then pattern them. If you can do that, you have a great chance of trying to kill a big deer. There's some big bucks being killed like that every year, but some people can't. I get calls every day. They're busy and they're asking me about tips and places to go. And I tell them 2 things: try to stay out of the middle zone, because that's where it's going to be pounded after the first day. I would hunt it the first day, then after that, you either got to go way in or try to hunt the lower range where nobody's looking. And if you do either one of those, you're going to probably have a better chance of killing a buck over 100 inches.
So you're talking about, first you talk about camping. You're talking about not camping near the Mexico-Arizona border. If you do have some of those border units that touch there, you would camp as far away from the border as you can, even if you had to drive to your hunting area?
That's correct. I think that's the best thing to do. And there's a lot of Border Patrol agents down there that they have isolated places that they're, and that I would camp close to those people. And I tell people all the time, and then drive, because then your stuff's probably not going to be invaded, and you're not going to have as much problems with the crossings. And I mean, all you got to do is look at the news right now. There's 7,000 of them coming up every day. This thing is getting crazy. I mean, I don't want nobody to get hurt, nobody down there. So I would camp farther up in. What I've done, Jay, and I try to tell people, I'm starting to stay in the hotels when I stay down there. Is what I'm doing now. I'm not camping at all. I stay in a motel, and I have to drive a little more, but doggone, it's just, you just don't want no trouble. I mean,
no problems.
Yeah,
I think that's great advice. Wouldn't you also say, Duwane, like, some of these established campgrounds and some of these areas where a lot of hunters camp, on these particular hunts, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and camp right in there where everybody's camping, so everybody's kind of together. And like you said, there's probably not going to be trouble if you've got 4, 5, 6 camps, within a mile, all camped kind of together. It's better than being off completely by yourself.
Well, and I think you just hit it right on the head, because as an outfitter, I used to try to camp where nobody would be and farther in, and I just got away from that in the last 10 years, and I camp by people, or I stay in a hotel, and it just makes it a lot less problems, because all you got to do is see on Facebook somebody's been broken into, and they've just all kinds of problems, and the Border Patrol will tell you that. So you want to be hunting and not having to worry about your camp being destroyed. So we stay in a hotel. Those hotels are very inexpensive down there. So
yeah,
you're going to stay 3 or 4 days, just stay in a hotel and eat in a restaurant, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, get a shower at night. I'm sure you do the same thing. I actually stop and, introduce myself to the Border Patrol, give them my license plate number, tell them, I'm planning to go, before light, I'll be driving up this road. I'll probably park somewhere. I mean, I kind of like to tell them my plan so that if they see lights and they go, okay, that's probably that hunter. Do you have the same experience, and do you stop Border Patrol and try and at least introduce yourself and tell them kind of what your plan is so, they kind of have an idea?
I do the exact same thing. I do it all the time, and they've always been very polite and nice. And something else I do, Jay, is I quit wearing camouflage. I started wearing orange hats and an orange shirt, because one of those guys explained it to me one time. He says, "You wearing that camo?" He said, "It's we might think you might be a drug dealer." And I said, "Really?" Yeah. He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'd wear orange." And ever since that, I thought he had a good point, so I wear an orange something. And he said, because none of those guys are wearing orange. That's what he said.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. When you talk specifically about these October hunts, we've talked about, the different sides of the hills to glass on and what have you. But I think we need to, I get the question so much, I think we need to go over it again. We talk about glassing those shaded slopes. So in other words, look at a hill, decide once the sun gets past, say, noon, 1 o'clock, where is the most shade going to be cast on that mountain or on that hill? And we've talked over and over about, in my opinion, in your opinion, you find more bucks in those predominant shaded areas. I just would like you to talk a little bit more about that.
That's the northwest side is what you're asking. When I give glassing lessons, and you've been very good about have that on your podcast, and I've gave another 15 or 20 in the last couple of weeks because of your podcast, and I tell those guys every time this is very simple. I said, when the sun comes up in the morning, you want to have it at your back. But at 8 o'clock in the morning, you want to turn around and look into the sun. If you could just get those two things straight, because then you're going to be looking directly into the sun, but it's going to be the northwest sides of the hills, and that's where the beds are going to be. And then I come up with the angle of the dangle, and the reason is that you could have a northwest side, but you can't see it from where you're sitting, so you might have to walk 500 or 600 yards or a quarter of a mile to get the angle to look back into that northwest side. And that's why I always came up with that angle of the dangle, is that's how you get those northwest sides, and that's exactly right. Jay, we're killing probably 80% of the deer we kill on that side of the hill, because those big bucks, as soon as that sun comes up, and you know as well as I do, they're going to go to that shady side, and they feel safe there, and that's why they're going there.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to get out of that sun, and that's, I think it's the single biggest tip that people out there, if they really listen to, of using the sun in the morning at first light for the first hour and a half. Use that sun to your advantage. Those deer pop. You can see them really well. You can glass fairly fast. You can pick deer up. We talk about, look at the places that are the high probability areas, the saddles, that type of stuff. But then, exactly like you said, as soon as about 8 o'clock, as soon as it kind of starts to warm up enough where you know that they're going to want to start laying down, you've got to look where they're going to lay down, and they're going to lay down in the shade. That's not to say that you can't find a buck on a south-facing slope that's, found a shade tree, and all day long he's up and down, up and down, up and down, using, I've seen them use a saguaro, as well as I'm sure you have, where they just use one little bush or a saguaro. But predominantly, to have more success seeing more bucks on these October, November hunts, if you can use the, first light, that real shiny, real good glassing, but then turn and start looking into the shade, as well as on into the afternoon. Duwane, I'm sure you've run into it before. Guys in the afternoon feeling like because they can see so well, they put the sun at their back, and they're glassing that, that glow. I call it the alpine glow, how the hills just shine, the last hour of light. But typically the deer are not on that side of the hill. In essence, you can see well, but you're looking on the wrong side of where those deer are going to be bedded, which means they get up slowly and they never make it over to that shiny side. Talk a little bit about that.
You really hit it right on the head, and it's that simple. It's easier to glass, like you're saying, on that hillside in the last hour. But the problem is the bucks that you want to kill, they're not there. By the time they get to their bed, to the top of the hill or around the corner or whatever they're doing, well, usually it's too dark. And so I actually preach to these guys on glassing lessons, don't leave the northwest side. Don't leave it. I said, just keep looking. You're going to kill more bucks looking in this thick side in the evening than you're ever going to kill trying to catch them going over. And I do the same thing like you. It's not going to say that you can't do that, because sometimes we do. We can get a canyon, you can see both sides, where you can see the southeast side and the northwest side, but a lot of times by the time they get there, it's too late. You can't see them in the rifle scope anyway.
Yeah. I believe we've talked about this before as well, but you know how sometimes we get these fall storms where you get heavy winds? I would also tell the guys that if you've got a real heavy wind, the common theme would be to, hey, let's get out of the wind, let's get off the side of the ridge and get out of the wind and glass out of the wind. I do the opposite. I get where the wind is pounding me in the face, and I'm looking directly into the wind, and that's when I start finding deer, because the wind is blowing in my face. I'm looking on the lee side, where I've hunted with a lot of hunters where it's blowing hard. They want to get out of the wind. They're like, my binos are shaking too much. Let's get out of the wind. I do the opposite. Get right into the wind, look straight into the wind, and look on those lee sides of the hill, and that's where you'll find those deer.
Well, you really hit it right on the head. I teach the same thing in the glassing lessons. And I tell people, look, if you get out of the truck and it's blowing 30 miles an hour, the open hillsides are gone. There's not going to be a deer left. They're not going to be there. So you've got to go straight to the northwest side. And I said, you're not going to like that. That's what I tell them, because exactly you're going to have a good tripod, or it's going to blow your binoculars around, and even with a good tripod. And then I tell them what I try to do is not stand then And they say, why, Duwane? I said, because it blows the binoculars around. Try to sit down and get the binoculars lower to the ground. And I said, and a lot of times I can't see all the vegetation, so I'm not getting as big an angle, and I pick up and I move quite a bit more, but my binoculars are more steady when instead of standing up being blown around like a windmill. And I said, you hit it right on the head. When that wind's blowing, they're going to be in that shade, and because predators are, there's lions, bobcats, coyotes, there's all kinds of predators out there, and they're not going to mess with them. We're not the predator. People think we are. The lion is the predator. He will kill those deer in a New York minute if he can sneak up on those things and they can't hear him.
Yeah, especially on windy days, for sure.
Yes.
Well, that's good stuff. As you transition, and we'll just talk briefly about it, but as these hunts transition for Coues deer from October into these November and now some of these early December hunts, and then even into the quote-unquote rut hunt, which, starts kind of mid-December, even on that hunt, I may glass a little more on the open sides and on the sunny sides a little longer as those time periods, as we get closer to December. But even on those December hunts, and I think Coues deer hunters in general that are struggling, if you would focus more on glassing on those thicker slopes, northwest, north, basically stick to the northern facing slopes. Duwane specifically says northwest, but if you stick specifically to the north slopes, you're going to kill more. You're going to find more bucks and probably kill bigger bucks and better bucks.
Everything that you're saying is exactly what I'm doing. And not only that, those deer will chase does on that northwest side almost all day. And you've seen it as well as I do. In Mexico when you're down there and here in the States, they chase those deer. They very seldom chase them on those open hillsides at noon. I mean, I'm not saying they don't, but they do most of it over on the northwest side.
Good stuff. The last time we talked, I believe, if my memory serves me correct, you had finished the archery hunt up in Unit 1, and I believe you had some early, it was either muzzleloader or early rifle, but I could be wrong. You might have just gotten back. What was your overall impression of Unit 1 compared to the past 30 years or whatever that you've been up there?
It's probably as poor as I've ever seen in over 30 years of guiding. We killed, everybody killed, but the growth was down at least 30 points and maybe 50 in cases. And Unit 1 has the most water of any unit in the whole state, and hundreds of springs were dry, marshes were dry, and those elk struggled. They struggled mightily. And I'll give you an example. My son had an elk tag, and we let a big bull go on the first day, and he made a mistake. And the bull took us a long time. We worked him, and he came in, and he walked right by us. And at 41 yards, I ranged him, and Luke let him go. And I said, "Why didn't you shoot it, Luke?" And he said, "I don't think it was big enough." And I said, "Luke," I said, "I've been here a week." I said, "That's the biggest bull I've seen." And the bull was bumping 350. Well, he, like all kids that have a dad like me, he's killed 2 370s. Right. But I told him, I said, "I'll tell you, Luke, I'd have shot that bull, son." And he said, "You think so, Dad?" 10 days later to the day, he shoots a 340, and he was tickled to death, Jay. He said, "You were right, Dad." I said, "Luke," I said, "listen, son," I said, this drought was horrendous on these animals, and I mean, it took a toll on them.
I've talked to some other guys, and they're really worried about the age class in one. They really feel like there's a lot of 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old bulls, but there's not a lot of those older age class bulls. A lot of them are kind of saying because of that burn, those late hunts, that over the last couple of years they've really hammered the age class. What is your opinion of what you witnessed as far as age class and compared to the last 40 years up there?
Everybody that you talk to like that is telling you the truth, and those elk are very vulnerable on that burn. they're probably more vulnerable there than they are anywhere in the state.
Yeah.
Because you can get up and glass 5,000 miles of burnt country, and generally there's a little bit of snow, and it's pretty easy to see those elk over there. And with equipment today, they can shoot them. We had 4 hunters there last year, Jay, and they killed 4 nice bulls. That's usually not the case, Jay. Before the fire, I mean, it was tough glassing because you did a lot of picking and moving and stuff, but now we don't have to do that. We can get up and glass. And the other thing, Jay, and you know this as well as I do, once they get those elk moving, they run right out in the open of 40,000 miles. There's nothing there, and they're very vulnerable to being shot at.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's
sure.
hurting. It's hurting one literally, but I don't know what we're going to do about it. I don't, you know how that goes, but I think that that the late rifle season is affecting it. It sure is.
Duwane, I won't take up any more of your time. I know you got to leave to the Kaibab tomorrow. Want to give you a chance if you have anything you thought we've missed or any concluding thoughts, and then let people know how they can reach out to you.
Well, I always appreciate you calling me and asking questions. I enjoy talking to you besides doing this. But if you'd like to get a hold of me, it's 520-385-4995. And I'd love giving glassing lessons. I tell people that you'll be 100% better when you leave with me that morning, and in 5 years you're going to be over 1,000% better. And I gave hundreds of people glassing lessons, and I just think it makes better hunters out of everybody if we start shooting higher quality bucks and letting the smaller bucks go. So that's really one thing I try to teach them. But you're doing a great job, and I always enjoy talking to you. You do a really good job, Jay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate having you on. I look forward to seeing you guys' success up on the Kaibab, and we'll have to double back and maybe talk a little late season Coues deer hunting or something in a month or two. So until then, buddy, God bless. I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us.
God bless you, Jay. And I'm a Christian. I'm glad to hear you say that man was a Christian. God bless you, because the Lord's blessed me.
Yeah, for sure, buddy. Well, sounds great. All right. Catch you later.
Bye-bye.